Hi, I'm Dr. Anna de la Torre, and I'm here today to speak to the girls on bullying. So I have a question for you. Tell me whether you think it's true or false. Bullying isn't serious. It's just a matter of kids being kids. True or false?
False.
Bullied kids need to learn how to deal with bullying on their own. True or false?
False.
Boys are usually the ones doing the bullying. True or false?
False.
Right. They're all false. So do you guys know what the definition of bullying is?
It's a form of harassment and usually insulting that is usually repetitive.
Yes. Bullying is a form of youth violence and can result in physical injury, social and emotional distress, and sometimes even death. That's when we have the suicide. There's a new term called bullycide, which is a term that came about after all the suicides that were happening after kids were being bullied. So that's when you hear the term bullycide, it usually means a kid that commits suicide after constantly being bullied. So victimized youth, kids that are bullied, are usually suffer from depression, from a lot of anxiety, from loneliness. They're usually introverted. They don't like to interact with others. They're sort of afraid and scared. That's the victim. Now, the kids that do the bullying, studies have shown that they're more likely when they grow up to get involved with drugs and get in trouble with the law in some form or another. So the types of bullying are physical bullying, the emotional. A lot of what the girls do when they bully is they do like the isolation where they have girls, like cliques of girls, making fun of another girl and saying don't be their friends or don't invite them to parties or just do things to make the other person feel left out. That's the kind of bullying that you normally see amongst the girls. With the boys, you see a lot more of the physical hitting and a lot more of the verbal name calling. And then there's cyberbullying, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, right? Yeah. Where you have people insulting or making mean comments about a child on the internet, usually on Facebook, and everyone gets to look at that and humiliates the child. So a lot of the studies that have been done on bullying said that teenagers say that revenge is the strongest motivation for school shootings. 87% said that the shootings were motivation to get back at those being bullied. Do you guys remember the school shooting in Columbine years ago? You guys were probably really young. But that was one of the first school shootings that was well known in the United States. Well, a lot of those kids that did the shooting were kids that were suffering from bullying. So their motivation for doing the school shooting was to get back at their oppressors. And you see that a lot in a lot of the shootings that have happened after that. So the signs of bullying is usually you see kids that have bruises that are unexplained. They don't tell anyone where they got those bruises or how they got them. These are kids that usually don't go to school or don't want to go to school or make excuses why they don't want to go to school. These are kids who are really nervous about going to school or when they are in school, they're always looking for an excuse to leave. They don't want to be there. They usually talk about suicide. They usually start giving their prized possessions away. So if you know someone that collects cards, like, or collects anything that that they like to collect, and then all of a sudden they start giving those things away, that's a really good sign that somebody's probably thinking about suicide. A lot of times kids will talk about suicide before they actually commit suicide. They talk about it at least 3 times to different individuals. But people don't recognize it as suicide because they think, oh, they just want attention, or they're just saying that, they're not really serious, and so they really overlook it. So there's a lot of signs to really look at before somebody gets to that desperation and that point. A lot of the kids also that are bullied feel like they're not good enough. They have really low self-esteem, and they usually have problems sleeping, usually because they're tormented with the thoughts of all the bullying stuff that's being said to them. So the signs of a bully behavior, this is a person that's a bully. Usually the bullies are not really hard to recognize, and I'm sure some of you guys have seen kids like this at school at some point, right? So these are kids that are really aggressive, they're really like outspoken, and they like to pick on kids that are weaker, usually kids that appear different in physical characteristics or that are different in their way they speak, their religion, and different ways they're different. So the bullied person takes advantage of those things and makes fun of them. And so that's one of the characteristics. They have a difficult time, the bullied person has a difficult time controlling their anger, is manipulative and controlling. They're quick to blame others for their mistakes. And they always need to be the winner. They don't like to lose. They always like to win an argument or always like to be right in whatever it is that they're talking about. So those are signs of a bully. Now, who is at risk for being bullied? Usually it's a child or a kid, a teenager, who has low self-esteem, is very quiet, is shy, doesn't have very many friends. It's kind of like a loner, doesn't really like to interact with a lot of kids. So this person is usually a prime target for being bullied because they don't have anyone to come to their rescue. Now, what's really important to know is that you can make a difference. You and everyone else in school who sees someone getting bullied can really make a difference. If you stand up to the bully and defend that child getting bullied, the bully is likely to back off and leave that child alone. Because remember, the child that's going to get constantly bullied is the child that's alone, that doesn't have anyone to come to the rescue. So this is why it's important for you to recognize that if you stand up and speak on someone's behalf, you can actually save their life. Do you know why I say that?
Yes.
How?
Because if they just keep continually getting bullied over and over again, and they might think about suicide,
Yes.
if you hadn't stood up for them, they might have just killed themselves after a long period of time.
Exactly. That is why it's so important for you to spread the message amongst your other peers and your friends to stand up for those people that can't stand up for themselves, those people that don't have that voice, don't have that strength. You need to be that voice and that strength for them so that you can potentially save somebody's life. And when someone is being bullied, years later, they're never going to forget about the effects of the bullying if they actually didn't commit suicide. They're never going to forget about the way they felt and all those things and who bullied them. They may not remember the names of those people bullying them, but they're going to remember you for standing up for them. They will remember you because that's going to make such a great impact in their life. So what can lead to bullicide? Remember we talked about that term? So usually what leads to that is constantly being in constant physical and emotional pain. Remember that kids that commit suicide and adults alike who commit suicide feel that suicide is the only way out. They're in so much emotional pain that they cannot see beyond their pain. They cannot see for tomorrow, for the future. They are so immersed in what they're feeling today and right now and feel that there's no way out. They feel that suicide is the only way that's going to get them out of where they are at this moment. So another thing that leads to suicide is constantly reliving those embarrassing moments, constantly having people remind them of, whatever flaw they have or exaggerating something they may not have or constantly calling them names. So being constantly harassed is what creates a lot of the emotional pain. Are you guys familiar with the type of bullying that's also caused by teachers and parents? There's cases of kids. In fact, there's one case of a child that I know about a couple years ago who was gay, and his parents at school they were bullying. He was being bullied for being gay and being different. But he would come home and his family would make fun of him. His parents would make fun of him also for being gay. So that also causes a lot of emotional distress. Imagine what it would be like if you guys are struggling at school and someone's constantly harassing you, and then you come home and you're getting the same harassment from the people that are supposed to protect you and love you. How difficult would that be, right? So this child ended up committing suicide. The warning signs, do you guys know what the warning signs are of somebody that's going to commit suicide? No?
You said giving away personal possessions.
Yes, giving away prized possessions, withdrawing if they were outgoing and happy and had friends and they were like usually happy. All of a sudden they're withdrawn and sad and they're not interacting anymore. Their personality changes. They're no longer interested in the things they used to be interested in. They're very gloomy, and their thoughts and they speak a lot about death. and about not being around anymore, a lot of the kids that I used to work with who were suicidal would make comments about going away somewhere. And they really had no plans on going on a trip. But they would say, well, when I leave, and there was always this constant conversation about when I leave, when really they were talking about when they die. So a lot of parents and kids alike didn't know what questions to ask, didn't know. They were afraid that if they said, well, where exactly are you going and are you thinking about suicide? So a lot of people think that if you ask them those direct questions that you're going to put that thought in their mind. But the truth of the matter is that thought is already there. The best thing to do is to bring it up and talk to them about it and say, are you thinking about suicide? I'm concerned about you because I know you're not going anywhere. Why do you keep talking about going somewhere? What's going on? And if you say it that way, they may open up to you. And that way you can get the kind of help that they need. Does that make sense? Yeah. So don't be afraid to ask somebody if they're suicidal in whatever language you want, whatever way you want. But don't be afraid to do that because that may just be the conversation that's going to save somebody's life. Recent stories. There was a 14-year-old boy, his name was Philip Parker. He took his own life in January 2012. His focus was, he was bullied at his school. It was a Gordonsville High School in Tennessee. He hung himself. There's another story. Amanda Cummings, 15 years old, of Staten Island. She made suicide attempts in December 27, 2010. She jumped in front of a moving bus and was killed. She died a few days later in the hospital on January 2nd, 2012. She had been bullied for years. She tried to get help with the school administrators, and nobody really gave her the kind of help that she needed. Jeffrey Furr from California passed away on January 1st, 2012. He was 18 years old. He was taunted by bullies for years for being gay. Jacob Rogers, 18, from Tennessee, took his life on December 7, 2011. A friend of Rogers reported that despite seeking help from counselors, he felt nobody was helping him. He started coming home his senior year saying, I don't want to go back. Everyone is so mean. And he hung himself. Billy Lucas, he was 15, from Indiana. He was called gay and told to go kill himself. His mother reported he was acting strange. While his mom went to work, he hung himself in the barn. Asher Brown, 13, he was from Texas. On September 23, 2010, he shot himself after being tortured for lip-syncing, having a lips, and for being a Buddhist. I can go on and on and on and on. There are so many cases across the country. I found a few cases in Canada and Australia of kids who committed suicide. And all of them had been bullied for a long period of time. All of them had tried getting help from someone, usually from someone at school. And the help that they needed was really not given to them. So many times they were just ignored, or they were said, just deal with it, it's no big deal, just handle it. One of the kids ended up killing himself after, in class, in front of a teacher, he was told, why don't you just go home and shoot yourself? No one would miss you anyway. And guess what he did when he got home that day?
Shot himself.
He shot himself. The mother sued the school and ended up winning the lawsuit a few years later.